Hello, everyone, and welcome. We really appreciate your taking time out of your busy day to attend our session today on working with ECE for 5-day credential assessments in Canada. After the webinar, you will receive an email with the webinar recording, an informational handout summarizing key points, and a brief survey we hope you'll answer. And 2 of you today will be selected, randomly selected, to receive an ECE Cares package, which includes a gift card and other assorted treasures. We'll announce the winners right before we begin our question and answer period. I'm letting people into the lobby now. Okay, here we go. Our presentation will last approximately 30 minutes. We know your time is valuable. However, stay with us if you'd like, as we're allowing an additional 30 minutes for any questions you may have. If you click on your screen, a toolbar will appear. Use the chat feature bubble to open up the chat box and input your questions. And please feel free to type in your questions during the webinar. So let's get started with some introductions. I'm Mary Beth Grunwald, Director of Global Initiatives at ECE. I've spent many years assessing credentials before moving to our marketing team. When I'm not working from home, being bothered by my cats, I enjoy engaging in Zoom trivia events with my overseas friends. I'll be facilitating our webinar for today. Next on the agenda will be our Director of Sales and Market Development, Jack Nelson. Jack is an international admissions alum and a resident New Yorker with a strong opinion on pizza. He enjoys long walks on the beach, long runs on the beach, and pretty much anything on a beach. Following Jack will be Zach Hollickwust, our ECE Aid and Market Research Manager with lots of experience in credential assessment, which will be his topic for today. Zach has been with ECE since 2006, and during his off time, he enjoys pounding on the drums as he plays music with friends and gardening with his family. Krista Hoffman will be up next. As one of our 2 sales managers, she will handle our question and answer period. Krista, having been born and raised just south of the Canadian border, grew up exploring the provinces on many vacations. She's thrilled that the Canadian and US border has opened up and looks forward to ice skating on Lake Louise and taking the ferry from Maine to Nova Scotia. ECE has grown from a one-man operation working out of a basement with 1 client and a cat to a staff of over 95 credential assessors and administrative staff. Founded by Jim Fry in 1980, we celebrated our 40th anniversary in late 2019. Jim's commitment to the ethical practice of the profession of credential evaluation based on facts and for the benefit and well-being of our global community has provided the foundation on which we have built ECE. During this informational webinar, we want you to discover why you should choose ECE. We want to show you how our technology advancements are streamlining the evaluation process and how our employees provide high-quality customer service to all of our clients by using the latest technology and up-to-date resources. They will help you help your prospective international students pursue their goal of further education. ECE is all about its people who believe in our mission and values. We encourage our employees to volunteer within their community, but also they do know how to have some fun when not working. So let's get started, everyone. First up, Jack, you're on.
Okay, thank you, Mary Beth, and greetings, everybody. As Mary Beth said, my name is Jack Nelson. I am our Director of Sales and Market Development. My job, as well as my other 2 colleagues on our sales team, is to understand the specific needs of institutions and to then be able to suggest how ECE services can best support them. So for my portion of the webinar today, I wanted to first take a real big step back and speak a little bit about what a credential assessment actually does. So today I'll talk about the basic components of an ECE assessment, why they're important, as well as the order experience at ECE from the student side, the delivery process for institutions, how the assessments and the vetted academic documents actually get to you, and how to get started working with ECE. First off, though, Mary Beth mentioned our founder, Jim Fry, the handsome gentleman on the left of your screen, which is a good place to start in that he quite literally wrote the book on comparative international education, in that it was his doctoral dissertation. In the States, credential evaluation or assessment used to be a government function until the 70s, actually. And then organizations were founded to fill that void, one of which was ECE, now the second largest credential evaluation organization in North America, which we're very proud of. So 40 years later, our standard assessment still has three main components listed out on your screen: recognition, authenticity, and equivalency. What are they? So recognition is a statement that an institution is properly recognized in its home country by whatever means are standard and correct in that country. What that doesn't always mean is that we're just looking at a list, perhaps from the Ministry of Education. Recognition and accreditation, first off, are two very different things. And so the recognition statements that we have on our assessments are specific to the rules in that country. Authenticity. My colleague Zach is going to talk a little bit more about our strict official document policies a little bit later and how they're different. But put simply, for standard reports, every document we receive undergoes a forensic document analysis. We are looking for the security features, formatting, serial numbers, signatures, titles, names, all the things we know should be there based on the metadata we've collected now for 42 years on every document that has come through our doors and is now saved as part of our archives. So when we are examining a credential, we're comparing it to all of the ones we've received previously from that country, from that institution, in that year, etc. And then equivalency. So for this part, there is most definitely an art and a science. The science is that data thing I just talked about, the super cool part. The science is the data we collect on individual credentials, education systems, which allows us to turn around these assessments so quickly. The art comes from our deep understanding of comparative international education and the instances of when something is the rule except when it's not. Nuances of this work are things like grading scales, which can be institution specific, or what should or should not be considered post-secondary credit, when programmatic accreditation, when a university may be recognized or accredited, but a specific program within it may not be, that kind of specific detail. So let's look quickly at a sample report on the right of your screen. What you see here is a sample course-by-course assessment, meaning it includes a breakdown of all the individual courses, including credits and grades. Some unique features of this type of assessment are that we also include a best results GPA for repeated coursework, for attempts versus completed coursework in systems where that exists, as well as an identifier for which courses were taken at the upper level. We'll also include information on the educational ladder in that country. So that is what studies were required for entry into this program, so you can get a sense of the student's full academic record, prerequisite through completion of their degree. So I worked in admissions for the better part of a decade. So like any good view book, here is our by the numbers slide, if view books are even still a printed thing. I hope so. Some important things to call out here are our average turnaround time, which is currently 5 business days, the tenure of our evaluators, which is 14 years actually on average, speaks to that deep knowledge I was just talking about, how quickly messages are returned, which is within 24 hours, which is indicative of our commitment to customer service, the fact that 90% of our applicants viewed their experience with us as one which was positive, and some of the larger numbers, like 40,000 assessments completed annually. That's where that data comes from. Why that's important is that's what's feeding our systems and our knowledge base so that we as an organization just know more by the sheer volume of work that we do. I also wanted to point out that a few years back, we were awarded the Better Business Bureau's Torch Award for Ethics, which is a real point of pride and I think should give you a sense of our company's values and our process. Okay, so let's talk order process. Part of what my team can do is provide suggested language for your website to let applicants know that an ECE assessment is accepted and what type of assessment they should order. So what I showed you before was a course by course assessment. We do also provide assessments with less information, including just those three basic elements. And again, going back, remember they are recognition, authentication, equivalency, that we would call a general assessment. Or we also have a version of that, which is a general with just the cumulative GPA or best results and cumulative GPA. It's important for students to know that they need to order a copy for your institution, since the copy they receive is actually electronic, received in their ECE account, and it can't be printed or screenshot. The screen will actually blur if they try to do either of those two things for security reasons. That allows us to specify the report type you want as part of your unique order process for your institution. Once they select your institution as a recipient, we can tailor the user experience best on that preference. And then there's also some other exciting tricks up our sleeve, like passing through a student ID. So you can more clearly identify their completed assessment when it arrives. Or, for example, providing you with a dedicated university branded specific landing page, brand new feature, which automatically and electronically sends the student's assessment to you when it's done. The next step in our process is for a student to review our document requirements, which again are country specific and based on two things. What documents are most secure in that country? And two, what documents are actually available to students in that country right now? Finally, the student submits their application fully online, and I will show you exactly what that process looks like for them. So students create an ECE account. They can always log back in and order copies, update information, ask questions. You'll see they also have the ability to order an assessment based on either the US or Canadian academic system or both. Another unique ECE offering is what we call our transnational discount for applicants who may be considering pursuing study in both countries. So that way they don't pay full price for both assessments. It's also important to note that our assessments are valid for 5 years, and applicants only need to log back into their ECE account to order new copies during that time. So, for example, a student who had planned on attending a US institution now plans on coming to a Canadian institution, or a student whose enrollment maybe was delayed over the last year or so, we've got them covered. On the bottom right, you'll see our helpful chatbot named Bingo, who we've trained to answer our most common questions. As soon as Bingo can't answer a question, they will transfer a student to customer service representative. We also have the ability to call, of course, through the live chat app, which is why you won't see a general number for ECE. All communication takes place through this one convenient spot, but I think what's really important to know is that anyone can always speak to a real live human. Where many companies have been shrinking or eliminating their call centers, we are actually growing ours. So that is what the order experience looks like. And now I'll show you how you would receive the completed assessments. Okay, so first off, here we have ECE Dispatch, which is our web-based, login-protected, free system for the delivery, tracking, and storage of completed assessments. And here's the really important part, the vetted educational documents. So assessments and the academic records appear here as a rich PDFs, meaning they include the data, the metadata that's stored behind them, which can be sent through to systems like Slate and other CRMs and things. These are stored here for 1 year. You can have as many users signed up for Dispatch as you need, and it's extremely common, especially for large institutions, for example, to have multiple accounts, say maybe one for a school of business, one for a specific faculty, that kind of thing. That is actually extremely common at the graduate level. And finally, I wanted to mention our institution support team that can actually be contacted by email for sure, or through Dispatch. We have a team of 2 customer service representatives who are dedicated just to institutions and can answer questions on specific assessments based on ECE reference number, assist you with technical issues or troubleshooting, or point you in the right direction as far as changes to system integrations and that kind of thing. They are absolutely amazing, and they typically reply within maybe minutes, maybe hours, but certainly not days. We provide white glove service to institutions, and we know that attention to detail is appreciated. So among our more recent clients, for example, are Kaiser Permanente, one of the largest health systems in the US, New York University, which uses ECE exclusively for undergraduate enrollees, and many more, about 2,000 actually around the world. I mentioned system integration, so let's talk a little bit more about that. For years now, ECE has been at the leading edge of using technology to leverage our vast knowledge and resources to provide applicant data to institutions in the ways we know that you want to receive it. So here on the left, you'll see both the many ways that we receive academic records electronically, including you'll see our friends at TrueCopy in India, MyEquals, Chesic in China, and also Digitary, who is working to build the MyCreds Canada-wide credential wallet system with Aruk. We've worked with Digitary for years in, for example, Australia and New Zealand, so we are very excited to grow that relationship in Canada. So documents can be received electronically. They arrive at ECE through what we call the ECE Gateway. That is our affectionate name for all of the electronic and digital pathways through which documents come in and assessments go out. You'll see two of those delivery methods on the right. In addition to ECE Dispatch, which are parchment and slate, they work in combination then with Dispatch that serves as a kind of backup and account management tool. We are building that list of integrations all the time, and we have some really, really exciting plans to that end. I did also want to briefly highlight our commitment to working with agents, international education consultants, and recruiters. ECE is one of, if not perhaps the only, credential assessment company that really embraces our agent relationships, including as an associate member of the American International Recruitment Council, or AIRC, whose conference is just coming up. Agents are able to order assessments on behalf of students, provided the documentation still adheres to those official requirements. Through Dispatch, one third party can send a completed assessment to another one, so it's entirely possible for an agent working with a student to send their ECE assessment directly to the institution of their choice, all done electronically, as you can see in the diagram. This setup is unique in that it gives agents and recruiters an active role in the credential assessment process, in getting a vetted transcript and their assessment from point A to point B for their clients or for their partner institutions. And finally, getting started with ECE is extremely simple. You could certainly just email us directly, and then we're going to put our contact information up at the end for myself, Krista, and Kim. But really, the only three things you need to do to start working with us are: one, sign up for Dispatch and receive electronic assessments and the vetted documents. Two, tell us what type of assessment you will accept so we can limit, again, the student's order experience to just that, course by course, general with GPA, etc. And also, if you do use a CRM or another system like Slate or something to that effect. And finally, add the landing page URL I mentioned to your site. And again, what that does is it speeds up the applicant, through the process, automatically selects the correct report type for them, and then adds a copy for a secure electronic delivery to you. Okay, so finally, to wrap up the sales portion, I wanted to briefly answer the question, why ECE? Why would we, after 40 years, decide to start offering a report that is specifically tailored to Canadian institutions? Well, for starters, we know that we can do assessments faster than any other company, again, which is an average of 5 business days, with the highest degree of accuracy. That ensures that all applicants are considered fairly. We've invested heavily in customer service, as I mentioned, respecting that our services are a reflection of the secondary schools, the colleges, the universities, the organizations, the healthcare systems, and all the organizations who refer students to us. And we stand by our work. Since we are relatively new to institutions in Canada, we offer students a report acceptance guarantee, meaning if they order an assessment and their institution won't accept it, we'll refund their application fee 100%. So to answer my own question, that, my esteemed colleagues, is why ECE. So on that note, thank you very much for joining us today. I'll be back later to answer questions at the end. I'm going to turn things over to my colleague, Zach, to talk more about the assessment process and to show you some of our favorite forgery attempts, which, by the way, we catch between 7 to 10 per month. So these are extremely interesting. So thank you all again. Take it away, Zach.
Thank you, Jack. Right. So yeah, again, I'll be walking you all through how ECE evaluators work on assessments. My portion of this webinar is sort of a behind the scenes look at our process. So first off, there's some general standards, but what do evaluators actually do? Since there's no comparable single source of information concerning tertiary educational institutions in other countries, evaluators are constantly looking through both online and physical resources while assessing academic credentials. And though every evaluator may do things slightly differently, there are some basic steps to the process. The first is looking at whether the school that was studied at is or was officially recognized in that home country. And this can include researching ministries of education or an official organization such as the University Grants Commission in India. Second, are the credentials authentic? Are the documents issued by the educational institution, the issuing body, or elsewhere? Or perhaps are they counterfeited or unofficially created in some way? If they are authentic, are they still in their original form or have they been altered? This is to ensure the fairness to all students and alumni who worked and studied hard to successfully complete their studies. Third, educational credentials can represent a completion of many types of education, from primary and secondary to tertiary and post-secondary, academic, technical, vocational, in-service, adult education, full-time, part-time. Was this program part of a certificate, a diploma, a degree program, or was the study not related to a formal educational qualification? So evaluators are taking in all of those into consideration when determining our recommendations. Fourth, did the applicant complete the program, or is it incomplete? This can affect how the evaluator researches and converts what a full credit load looks like, which leads us into fifth. What is the credit equivalent of the quantitative data reported in the educational credential? And finally, what is the grade equivalent of the qualitative data reported in the educational credentials? And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So I don't want to go too deep into credential evaluation philosophy, as whole books and articles and webinars have been created to talk about that, but I do think it helps to see all the considerations we take into account when we're providing an assessment. For converting grades, we consider a number of factors, including word descriptors like outstanding versus excellent versus very good or satisfactory. What is considered the best grade and the lowest passing grade, and how grades are distributed in that particular school and the country education system as a whole. For credit conversions, we look at what a full-time load of hours or credits would be for a particular program. Likewise, in basic credential evaluation philosophy, we follow the rule that 1 year of education in one country equals 1 year of education in another country. And lastly, I should mention, sometimes the question of inconsistencies in grades and credit conversions does come up. And in most cases among a specific school, the conversions will be consistent. However, sometimes the conversion factors can depend on particular programs within an institution, and definitely grades and credits can oftentimes be converted differently at the same institution, depending on whether the program is undergraduate or graduate. Let's move on to documentation requirements. This is a big question always for students and applicants. So it comes up all the time, and what I'm going to take you through here is specifically how ECE handles our own documentation requirements. So first, ECE determines our document requirements based on what we believe is the most secure and the most reasonable to ask for, as Jack had mentioned earlier. So it can vary from country to country for us. In some countries, we want to see originals. In other countries, we want the documents to be sent to ECE in sealed envelopes from the issuing institution. And in other cases, we may only need to see a scan or a photocopy because we're going to verify all of those documents from that country directly with either the institution or the Ministry of Education. Our evaluators frequently review our documentation requirements as a whole. So we also review individual countries when situations change, within a country, and usually we'll hear from students if there are issues, but we ultimately make decisions about our requirements after research and confirmation from those schools or the ministries of education. Again, ECE requires the most secure document we believe the student can reasonably obtain. In the case of any applicants who cannot provide a translation, ECE also offers a translation waiver option for a small fee. And this option is for general with GPA assessments, and the translation is solely for our internal use at ECE. Part of the experience of our evaluator staff at ECE is that many are native in, fluent in, or have studied languages, and they've seen so many reports over the years that they know what they're looking for and what they're looking at. This brings me next to verifications, another big topic. ECE evaluators go through extensive document forensics training. We know what to expect for any given time period. But if we receive documents for something we have never seen before, or from a school we have nothing for in our archives, or if the documents don't match the same documents from that same time period in our extensive archives, we're going to send for a verification to the issuing institute or ministry to verify those documents. Are they correct? And what's going on with this program? This process can be, as you can expect, either quick or quite long, depending on the country and school. We really recommend that the applicant sends ECE the type of documents we ask for in the required documents section. So if we ask for originals, we would like them to please send originals, because it cuts down a lot of the waiting time and makes for a quicker, smoother evaluation process. Again, evaluators are trained in all facets of falsification detection and verification, and we verify all documents that originate from known online databases, like in Ukraine, or for example, the West African Examinations Council and others. So let's take a quick look at just a couple of these really great examples of where our skills and training from our evaluators comes into play. This first example is from Osmania University in India, and was caught by one of our more experienced evaluators, Jason, who's been at ECE for over 28 years. On the left is an example of an authentic Bachelor of Commerce diploma from the mid-90s, and on the right is the confirmed falsified diploma that Jason caught. So on their own, not side by side, they might both look totally legitimate, but as we've mentioned with our archives, our evaluators look through our archives to make sure that things are matching up. So what were some of the red flags that Jason saw? So the layout is off compared to other samples we've received from this time period. There is certain script fonts used instead of areas that should be filled out by hand. Fonts vary, so like medium under Bachelor of Commerce for English, it should be in all caps, for instance. We couldn't find the signature in our archives, and there was missing quote marks around letter groups. That hologram up in the upper right by the photo, it was not used in the early to mid 90s. The paper stock was unusual, and there were other inconsistencies with this particular diploma. So we sent it away for verification, and it was confirmed by Osmania University that this was not, in fact, a authentic document. This next example points to not only the great skills and training of our evaluators, but also to the extensive archive of documents and samples we have to look over when comparing documents. This is a bachelor's degree from Vietnam and was assessed by one of our research evaluators, Karen, who's been at ECE for about 10 years now. On its own, on the surface, this document looks totally fine, and the format looks good, has all the features we'd expect to see on a diploma from Vietnam around this time. So what red flags popped up for Karen? Well, the first thing that she noticed was the birth year, 1995, and the graduation year of 2013. This would have made the student only 17 or 18 years old, graduating from a 4-year bachelor's program. So she dug a little deeper. And we didn't have an example of this diploma from this particular university from this time period in our archives. But Karen was able to find a transcript from the school in our archives to compare the stamp and signature. And the seal and the signature didn't match the transcript we had. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that the diploma is a fake diploma or document. Just different variables exist for why a signature or a stamp could be different, but in combination with the birth year, it was enough of a red flag to send it away for verification. And after sending it for verification, the school confirmed that it was indeed a falsified document. So as an aside, if you love document forensics as much as we do at ECE, you might want to check out some of our free resources on the ECE Connection. The Connection is our resource hub for news, videos, publications, as well as a message board where colleagues can ask questions about documents and grading scales. All of our evaluators monitor it, as well as colleagues all over the world. And right now we have all of our e-learning recordings available for free. And there's a very popular webinar about fraud and authenticity issues if you want to check it out over there. And finally, as the ECE Aid manager, one other aside that I do want to mention before we head into the Q&A portion of our presentation is our philanthropic initiative, ECE Aid. So as a registered charity, we're very proud of ECE Aid and what it stands for. Through fundraising activities that include donations from our board of directors and staff, as well as from some of our paying applicants, we're able to offer fee waivers for ECE services to applicants that might not be able to afford a credential assessment. So we work with over 60 institutions and organizations who provide referrals to ECE Aid. And then we distribute a coupon code that will cover 100% of those assessment fees. Eligibility guidelines include refugee or asylee status, financial hardship, and a range of other circumstances. Then the ECE Aid recipient receives the same high quality service from ECE that paying applicants would receive. And if your institution is interested in what we might be able to provide through ECE Aid to any of possible vulnerable students, just get in touch with me. Thanks for listening. I'm going to hand over the Q&A portion of this webinar to Krista, and see you on the other side of this.
Okay, thank you, Zach, for sharing your evaluator expertise with us. My name is Krista Hoffman, one of the 2 sales managers here at ECE, and we are now going to move on to the Q&A section of today's webinar. A reminder that you can use the chat feature bubble in your toolbar to open up the chat box and input your questions. As Jack previously highlighted, customer service is very important to us here at ECE, so we have set aside plenty of time now to answer your questions. After the Q&A today, you might have some follow-up questions in the coming days or weeks, so please feel free to reach out then. Here you can see the Canadian territories divided by sales team member. For those provinces in blue, you can reach out to Jack Nelson. For those in green, contact my co-sales manager, Kim Hyatt, and I am the contact for those provinces in orange. And if you find the need for some technical support, our institution support specialist can be reached easily by email. This information will also be emailed to you following the webinar. Right now, I'm going to give you some time to type some more questions into the chat box. Meanwhile, I will welcome back Mary Beth for a brief announcement.
All right, now comes the fun part for me, at least, and for 2 of you. Well, the ECE randometer did its thing, and it delivered to me 2 attendees' names for one of our ECE Cares packages. So the winners are, joining us from Manitoba, Charlene, and coming in from Alberta, Amanda. So Charlene and Amanda, you'll get a second email from us asking for your physical address so we can get and ship that package out to you. So look for that. And also, don't forget, you can also get another second email from us regarding information that has been shared during this particular webinar as well as a recording. So, time for me to end and time for the Q&A to begin. Congratulations to the winners.
Okay, thank you, Mary Beth. At this time, I will go ahead and stop sharing the slides so that you can see our presenters' faces during the Q&A. And we already have a few great questions in the chat box here for us, so let's go ahead and get started. So the first question, Zach, you touched a little bit on credit conversions in Canada during your part of the presentation, so I will direct this one to you. And the question is specific to Alberta, where the grade scale for higher ed and post-secondary is fixed for all institutions in terms of GPA. And the question is ECE transparent about this for the course-by-course evaluation?
Great question. So full disclaimer, when I was an evaluator for about 10 years, and I actually didn't do evaluations for the Canadian system. However, I will say this, as far as transparency, yes, ECE is quite transparent in how we assess and evaluate credentials. And that's sort of part of our customer service go-to, is that you can speak directly with the evaluator who prepared the assessment. So if there are questions about, what GPA was used or how we calculated a particular GPA and what scale we used, most likely you'd receive that information through an email directly from one of our associates or the evaluator, or you can just contact one of our CSRs, and they'll put you through to the evaluator, who will get back to you about and speak directly with you about what what they used and why. So yeah, I could look that up for you, but it would take me a second to do some research to figure out what we do for Alberta specifically. But overall, like I said, it's very transparent as far as how we're making the decisions that we make.
Yeah, and Zach, if I could just add to that, just one addition to that too is, I think it's important to mention that, although when we just first, as I alluded to, decided to start providing reports for Canadian provinces, it wasn't like we just took our old report and, deleted the word USA and replaced it with Canada. This was actually about a year plus buildup, where the evaluator team really dove into making sure that we're not just we'd spent 40 years evaluating to the US standard. So now the equivalencies, the grading scales used, all the information that goes into them is that they are evaluated specifically to Canadian standards. So that's what Zach's, I think I'm sure you're talking about the wiki, which is a fountain of knowledge and would just take a little bit of searching to, I'm sure, get that specific information.
Okay, great. Thank you both for sharing. We have another question here related to document requirements. Zach, you had touched on this a little bit, so I'll send this question to you. And the question is, where do applicants send their documents? Do they need to be sent to the USA for evaluation?
Yeah, so if for that particular country we're looking for originals or for sealed envelopes, they can be sent to our office we're based out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So those transcripts or documents would be sent directly to us. However, in Milwaukee, but we do, there are some other methods that we that are acceptable. So if they are, we have on our Contact Us page, we have a list of how to send those documents, either electronically if we accept those for the particular country, or other various methods that Jack had described earlier with worldwide transcripts and other kinds of electronic sharing of data. But yes, in short, send it to the US.
Great information. Thank you, Zach. So the next question is also related to documents, but more specifically for the institution side. So Jack, I'll send this question to you. So the question is, can the institution submit documents for evaluation rather than having the student submit them?
Sure, that's a great question. So I can speak specifically to a model where we are doing a okay, so the institution that I'm thinking of, they are doing the GPA calculation for undergraduate applicants. What they're using ECE for in this model is kind of a final, let's call it a spot check for enrolling students. So they've already been admitted, they've already deposited, they have registered for classes presumably, but they want us to do the final check for the authenticity of official documents. So In that case, we are in some cases receiving documents from the institutions themselves abroad. We're receiving some documents from the institution in the States. And what we've done is worked out a system where they receive them, they confirm that they were received sealed. They are working with our document requirements, our official requirements. They understand them. So we trust them to send us documents and that they tell us what they did with them. So they include envelopes and things like that. But again, as Zach said, there's plenty of instances where everything can just be electronic, and the institution can just can kind of help facilitate that we need to acquire those students' documents electronically.
Thank you, Jack. Very helpful. Okay, we have another question coming in here. I haven't read it fully quite yet, but I noticed that it's referring to a link for an institutional website. So Jack, I'll go ahead and read this one and send it to you. So it says, on a granular level, having a link on an institutional website would have to be vetted. I'm needing to receive a report from your client and our applicant to see if I can use it, but I have to make sure the report gives me what I really need, assessment and authentication, and then images of the documents ECE verified as attachments. What is that report called?
Assessment, authentication, and then images of the documents. If you don't need a course breakdown, so to see each individual course and the corresponding semester hours / credits and the grades and things, if you don't need that, then really I think what you would want would be a general report. Provides again, there's 3 basic elements: recognition, authentication, and equivalency. So it's worth repeating though that when reports are sent electronically, whether they're sent through to Slate, whether they're sent to Dispatch, for the majority of institutions that are not maybe have API or something like that set up. When they're sent through to Dispatch, they include the vetted electronic academic documents. So when you go into your Dispatch account, you see the completed evaluation as a PDF. You also see the documents that were used to prepare it. Does that answer that question?
I think so, but Ina, go ahead and clarify. Okay, yep, she says that's epic. So thank you, Jack.
We think so, but.
Wonderful. All right, we have another question here about fees. Jack, I will ask this one to you. So how do your fees for students compare to other alternatives in the market?
Sure. No, it's a great question. Oh, I'm sorry, Zach, were you going to say something?
Oh, no. Do you want to take that, Jack?
Well, I could, if you want to start, just because on our team, I mean, I think have the best view onto as a research evaluator, not Krista, that I'm not happy to speak to, but Zach, since you do so much work looking at other evaluation companies and things, if you want to start, I'm happy to finish.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, we kind of range right in the middle, maybe the high middle. We're not the most expensive. We're not the cheapest, but we're not the most expensive. As a nonprofit in the US, we keep our pricing at just basically our overhead. And I think personally from our 5-day turnaround to our stellar customer service, what the students are paying for is really worth it. But we're right around the middle. I don't know what Jack wants to add.
No, I was going to say the same. So a course by course report is $195 US, which is really right in that kind of the middle of that pack. The one thing that I would be remiss if I didn't mention though is in the non-recurring costs of things, which once you start getting technical, that's what adds up. So for example, Dispatch is free. The landing page that I mentioned where students can order a specific report and everything is kind of handled automatically in terms of their user experience, also free. I mean, so those kinds of technological enhancements that really, why it's important for all of us is that, it streamlines the process, it makes things more clear. Why it's important for them is that I think we recognize that we all recognize that everything you do to apply to a college or a university as an international student is complicated. So everything that helps them get to that point of where they need to go and supports them in things, that's what is worth it. Zach, as you said.
Okay, thank you. As a follow-up question, the question is if they would pay in Canadian dollars. So Jack, do you want to clarify that?
That's a great question. I can tell you that it's the course by course report is $249 Canadian, and we use a third party payment site, so I believe that it works just fine using a credit card. So I believe that students are applying from everywhere in the world, so I think as far as I know, from my position, it's the currency conversion is not an issue. Mary Beth, you're agreeing with me, so I assume I answered that correctly. I hope. Right.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Jack, for clarifying that. Looks like there is maybe a question coming in right now, so I will give it a second to come through. Jack, we did have a question previous to the webinar today that was asked. I was wondering if you could just expand on right now, and that was, can you let us know what universities in Canada that ECE currently works with?
Sure, of course, absolutely. So it depends on if we're talking about the universities and colleges to which ECE reports have been sent previously, because remember, over the course of 40 years, now 42 years, almost 42, there were plenty of institutions in Canada that said either received an ECE report because a student may have applied to both U.S. and Canadian institutions, and they received their ECE assessment, and they said, well, this is great, I'll forward it along to the Canadian HEIs as well. So, for example, in that case, University of British Columbia, University of Calgary, University of Manitoba, University of Regina, University of Toronto, McGill University, where else? Thompson Rivers University. We've sent you things. York University. Currently, ECE is listed on the websites of the Ascenda School of Management, Adler University, Northern Alberta Institute of Technology, Southern Alberta Institute of Technology. Some of you are here today. We're so glad that you're joining us. Trinity Western University, and others. The interesting thing is, the reason why that landing page that I was talking about before is so important is that that's how we know where our assessments are going. It's previously, before technology kind of caught up, a student could order an assessment and send it wherever. So years ago, there was about 50% of our assessments that were what we called mystery reports, because they went to institutions, but who knows where. Now we've gotten to a place where the security features and the technology has caught up. So we have a better understanding, I think, of and especially going forward, of where those assessments are going. And that lets us work with you all more closely to answer questions, to talk about changes, to talk about enhancements to our process and those kinds of things.
Okay, thank you, Jack. There's another question that has come through, but before I ask that, I just want to let everyone know that we are approaching sort of our timeline here for the end of today's webinar, and we want to make sure everyone's questions are answered. So if we do not get to your question today, we will follow up by an email. So any last minute questions that might come up to you in the next few minutes, go ahead and type into the chat box and we'll follow up later. But Jack, this next question I'm going to direct your way again. And so the question is there a contract required to work with ECE?
Short answer, no. No, we don't require a contract to work with institutions, and as we said at the beginning, we work with about 2,000 secondary schools, colleges, universities, organizations around the world, many of which, the majority of which are without contract. Where we do, we're happy to, first off, sign documents that are, with institutions where their technology compliance team or their data security team or some entity within the institution may want to, review our policies and sign a document to that effect. Or if there's something unique that we're doing, if we're, relying on a software integration, or if we've talked about it and there's some enhancement to our report that we can provide or would provide, those are the kinds of instances where we would really look to sign a statement of work, just to document things, what we're going to do, who's responsible for what, who's the correct contact to go to when you have questions. A perfect example of that actually is in the case where there's a three-way partnership between an institution, ECE, and an agent or recruitment company or some other third-party organization. We just want all three of those entities to be on board and understanding with, here's the process, here's the expectations for ECE, here's what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And if you have questions, here's who to go to.
Okay, thank you for confirming our procedures on that, Jack.
Sure.
Another question. Oh,
excuse me, I just wanted to add before we go further, there was that question about Canadian and US dollars. And I just wanted to add that we do have a currency converter tool on our website. And so any applicants can easily find out what the cost of a specific assessment report will be for them. And they can do that right as they're applying for the assessment report.
Okay, thank you, Mary Beth. Okay. Up next, we have a question related to secondary schools. So Zach, I will ask this one to you. Do you do assessments for academic work completed in secondary schools?
Yes, in fact, we do. In short, we do. We work a lot with secondary schools throughout the world and every educational system there is. So yeah, we, I don't know what else to say. Yes.
Great, thank you. There's a couple more messages coming through.
Including on a course-by-course basis, I think, right?
Yep, that's actually the next question. So do you do course-by-course for secondary schools?
You know what, actually, let me take that one just because there was a really interesting question a couple of years ago at the NAFSA conference in LA, maybe, where it was certain people at institutions from US states were coming up to our booth and asking that exact question. And the reason was because the US states where they lived had changed their rules for students at secondary level transferring in from international secondary schools and not permitting them to take placement exams. So they were, their conundrum that they had was, we have these students coming in, we have no idea what to do with them as far as math and science specifically. So, we talked about course-by-course evaluations and how those can at least help them place students at the secondary level, and then at the undergraduate level, how they can for those admissions folks, how they can understand, prerequisite coursework, especially for STEM fields, and so on.
Great, thank you, Jack. Okay. One more question. In grade conversion is also the idea of academic hours and credit equivalency. Does ECE document the suggested Canadian equivalent for credits completed in the course-by-course evaluation? You're both nodding. Jack or Zach, either one of you want to take
Jack,
this one?
that's all you.
Yes, so we do. It would be converted into the Canadian equivalency for credits that were completed. So, and in the past, as Jack had mentioned, we've worked with Canadian schools who, prospective students have sent our US evaluations to, but now with our Canadian services, yeah, we're converting it to the Canadian system, not the US system.
Wonderful. Thank you for clarifying that, Zach. I think it looks like our questions are kind of calming down here. So, Mary Beth, I might pass to you at this time for closing. And Ina, it looks like there's a couple more coming through, but we'll follow up later today.
Is there one more coming through?
There is a message being typed at the moment. Yeah.
Well, before we get to that, then I just want to say to everyone, thank you so much for attending this. We hope we answered a lot of your questions, and we hope that you have found hopefully a reason to begin using ECE for your credential assessment reports. And don't forget, you will be getting an informational document along with a survey that we'd like you to complete as well. I think that's it for questions. So, yep.
Yep, I think it slowed down.
And a recording of the session, so you'll be able to go ahead and see our lovely faces again. So, all right. Thank you again, everyone. And we'll be having more of these informational sessions in 2022. So we look forward to seeing you there. And don't forget, you can contact us in a multitude of ways. We're here for you. Thanks again. And goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.